Hello, BookTube. I'm still, as you can tell, up at the old house in Vermont, which throws a bit of a monkey wrench in my plans to do a library tour for 2022. I'm going to do a library tour of all my books in 2022, but I'm not with them, except for the ones I bought while I've been up here. I'm not with them. And I want someone else to do a library tour of the books here, the endless books here. It will take that certain someone else a whole year to do this. So I am going through books in memory. I'm going down memory lane to books that I have had in the past that I have bought and scanned. I scanned their covers with a flatbed scanner and then got rid of them for one reason or another. I will resume my normal library tour as soon as the Bean and I go back to Hyde Cottage. And I came back online this morning to emails from several of you. Let's just put it that way. Several of you are among the 30 million people who are in the path of this big diagonal winter storm that is coming down from the north and is going to sweep across an enormous swath of the United States. Some parts of the United States are going to get another foot or maybe even 2 feet of snow, including parts of Texas, which has led, needless to say, that has led Twitter to go crazy with jokes about Texas's disgraceful Senator Ted Cruz, who bolted from the state during last winter's freak storm there. Rather than care for his constituents, he bolted from the state and went to Cancun. And when he was caught, as I don't know how he could have expected that he wouldn't be caught, when he was caught, he blamed his daughters, his teenage daughters. A thoroughly reprehensible piece of scum who just keeps getting reelected. You know, it makes me think, when I think about how Ted Cruz keeps getting reelected, even though no one likes him. When he was running for president, 2016, a camera crew went to his home to get one of those, just the stock footage of the loving, caring family home. And you could tell from the looks on all of his relatives' faces that they can't stand him, that he had to pay them off camera to hug him. I often wonder when I think about that, and then I think about all of the drum banging that Republicans in this country have done about fraudulent voting and fraudulent election results. I wonder sometimes if it isn't just massive projection. I wonder if Ted Cruz has ever been legitimately elected to office, even class president. But I came back online this morning and a number of you were asking me, well, you seem really comfortable up in Vermont and there's a storm coming. Are you sure that it won't throw off your plans yet again? I have to admit, I am very comfortable up here. Several of you have been very kind about it, saying that it really does seem like it's doing me good. That's very nice. Certainly the atmosphere up here is fantastic, except for one particular feline inhabitant. Just doesn't seem to get it into her head that there's a new order to things. She's as big as my dog, so she gets ideas. But it's looking like this winter storm will have blown itself out by Friday. Friday mid-morning, Friday afternoon, something like that. I think the weather watch goes on until midnight just to be safe, but I don't think it's, unless the storm strengthens and gets much worse than people think, which one prediction model says it will. I think we'll be going back to Hyde Cottage this coming weekend. So I will be resuming my normal in-person library tour then. Although, again, a great number. I leave my email on every video, so I get lots of responses from lots of people to lots of different things. It doesn't have to be about books. It doesn't have to be about my library tour. I get emails about all kinds of things. What do you think I should do with this class? Why is this teacher so annoying? Why is my brother so annoying? And also innumerable dog emails. From those of you who've just got a puppy to those of you who have an adult dog with behavioral issues. I've trained dogs for a million years, and I also understand them better than anyone in the world. And also, every once in a while, someone just wants to reach out and lean on the shoulder of someone who knows what it's like to go through losing a dog, as I did on this channel. And I'm always happy to do anything like that. Always happy to be there for those purposes and any others for email. But several of you have emailed and said that you actually like the Library of the Lost and that you hope I don't discontinue it when I go back to Hyde Cottage. So I can't win for losing here. This is a tour of books that I don't have anymore. Sometimes I want them, sometimes I don't, but I don't have them anymore. They're a record of well over a decade past. So we're going to go through a few more of those today, and maybe I'll mix in a few with my library tour when I get back to Hyde Cottage. So the first one we're going to do today is an old Fawcett paperback. I think it was $1.50. It is Child of the Sun. It's a historical novel. That is a Frank Frazetta cover, an inimitable Frank Frazetta cover. And it's by Kyle Onstott and Lance Horner. And Kyle Onstott wrote Mandingo, a historical novel that has a couple of very effective scenes, but you'd better find it used because it's never gonna be reprinted. Not a chance in the world. And Lance Horner is responsible for a lot of work, but he wrote what became a series of books about Falconhurst. And this is neither one. This is not the Jilly Cooper style, bodice ripper family generational saga that Wilbur Smith or Jeffrey Archer went on to make really popular. This is a historical novel, as you can probably tell from the cover. That cover, I still don't know. There are a couple of things about that cover. There are, as you can see, it's all tushy. You've got a tushy down there. You've got a tushy over here. You've got a horse's tushy, and you've got, of course, the highlight of the whole picture, the place that your eye moves to. If it moves in a circle that is clockwise, it is going to end up on the rather exorbitant tushy of the charioteer there. This is a historical novel about Elagabalus, about the Roman Emperor Elagabalus, who came to the throne as a teenager, died, was killed as a teenager, didn't live. He wasn't on the throne more than a handful of years, and he comes in for an extra bit of excoriation on Gibbon's part in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and other later historians, have likewise just ripped him apart for being the ultimate in Roman orgies, the ultimate in Roman dissipation. We don't really have many details. I would argue that we don't have many details about what this kid was like at all. Elagabalus, of course, was not his actual name. He took that name because, as the title of this book implies, he started to identify himself a little bit with sun worship. He's a far more fascinating figure than this is a fascinating book. This book is written exactly at the talent level of these two authors, and that is strictly lower B level. It's popcorn munching. You can definitely get your way through it, but it wouldn't be on any of my Roman historical lists. I read it, and despite the fact that it was lackluster, I would gladly take it again. I would gladly buy it if I saw it again. Okay, this next one, I don't know a lot about this. I scanned it, but I don't know a lot about it because there isn't much about it in the scan. This is Egyptian Mummies, but no idea whose Egyptian Mummies book this is. I'm assuming, since that's a fairly old-fashioned cover, I'm assuming that this was done in the early 20th century when there was a flood of books about Egyptology. I'm assuming that's the case, but I couldn't tell you who wrote this thing or the date. And I also, off the top of my head, just based on this cover scan, I don't think I remember much about it. A lot of these older, big, heavy, ornate hardcovers with the hardcover pictures with the onion skin protector over them and maps, internal floor plans of temples and all, a lot of these older books that you'll see at yard sales or at used bookstores for a couple of dollars are amazingly wonderful. They pull out the stops, and as such, that's probably why I got this. Probably I found this and wasn't all that interested, and then flipped through it and saw what a work of art it was. But it's gone. I would love to if I ever see it again. Any of you Egyptologists or you archaeologists, any of you recognize this volume? Did I accidentally sell something that was worth $50,000? Oh, okay, all right. This next one is Edith Patterson Meyer. This is her biography, First Lady of the Renaissance, about Isabella deEste, who grew up in Ferrara, one of my favorite cities in the world, and is an odd character for the Renaissance in that she is extremely well documented inside and out, which is very, very rare. We not only know, because she was royalty right from day one, we know a lot about where she was on every given day of her adult life and what she was doing, who was with her, maybe even a little bit about the food that was served. We often have kitchen records. We know all of that. We know a lot more of that than we know about, for instance, a lot of her Este kinspeople that we wish we did know. But on top of that, we know a lot about her internal. She wrote endless letters, just endless letters. And some of them are official, so they're wooden, and they were probably put together by rhetoricians and she just had to sign them, but quite a few of them are clearly written by her to friends of hers or acquaintances of hers. She was a lavish patron of the arts, lavish patron of authors and painters and whatnot, and carried on correspondences that got more and more personal with a lot of the figures of her day. And those letters give us an unbelievable insight, a look into this historical figure that we really wish we had with everyone, right? We wish we had that with everyone. One thing that I absolutely do not understand about, for instance, well, I do understand. I was going to say I don't understand about the 21st century, which is all about fake outrage, about fake inclusion and fake equity and fake diversity. It's all about fake outrage about those things. The 21st century I now see is being entirely constructed by Twitter. So it is all venom and it's all fake. The one thing I was going to say, I don't understand why the 21st century, if they're so hot on all of this stuff, on saying that men have only held a marginal place in any of human history, that it's mostly been female-run cities, female-led armies, female discoveries of one kind or another. I saw someone, naturally on Twitter the other day, just blandly mention, a blue check mark, pronouns in her bio, just blandly mentioned that every single antibiotic drug in the history of mankind was created by a woman. You'd think people would know that. The reason people don't know that is because it's an effing hallucination and you're a moron. But the one thing I was going to say, I don't understand why, given that the 21st century hasn't come out with a lavishly annotated and very beautiful collection of the letters of Isabella deEste. It's sitting right there. But then I remembered that the 21st century is censorious and it's bitter and it's venomous, but it's also deep as a deep dug well stupid. The people who are virtue signaling, the blue check marks on Twitter who are virtue signaling about all this diversity, equity, and inclusion are bone stupid. They don't read anything. They don't know how to read anything. They don't care about reading anything. They don't want to know anything at all about anything. They don't want to know anything. They just want to make you repeat what they say as true. They want the power to make you do that out of fear. That's all. And that doesn't require any kind of knowledge, and it certainly isn't going to send any of them scurrying to the archives to bring out an annotated collection of letters of Isabella deEste. It's a legitimate thing that has legitimately been discriminated against. I mean, the worst part of these horrible blue checkmark scolds and censors is that the bedrock of the point they're making, that there's been a sexism-driven, drastic underrepresentation of the actual historical presence of other races, of women. That bedrock point is true. we could stand. It's disgraceful that we get 2 biographies of FDR every year and none of Isabella deEste. That's disgraceful. I have. There was a wonderful old 2-volume, well-illustrated, very ornately written, let's put it, biography of Isabella deEste that is the one that I have. I don't actually have this one anymore. And I think in this case, I remember that I scanned the cover, I read the book, and I thought, well, it's the same facts as that old, late 19th century 2-volume biography of Isabella deEste, but it's not nearly as enjoyable to read. Why would I have 2? Why would I keep it if I'm always going to want to go back to that other one? So there was no new research, so I got rid of it. But not before I had mined it carefully for my novel, 1515. Again, unpublished and again, unpublishable. I wrote a novel called 1515, set in that year. I always wanted to write an Italian Renaissance novel, and I also wanted to try the experience of writing a 1,000-page novel. I'd never done it before. And for 1515, I decided it would be 1,000 pages. And set it around a core cast of characters, all historical figures. I didn't make anybody up. I made up secondary characters, but my main characters, the narrative focal point of each of the rotating chapters, is a real person. I picked 10 figures from history: Henry VIII, Selim I, Sultan of Turkey, Isabella deEste, Leonardo da Vinci. I picked 10 figures from history, and on New Year's night, on the first night of the year 1515, a black-clad assassin, head to toe, black-clad, finds them wherever they are and tries to kill them, all 10 of them, and succeeds with only one. One of those characters dies. Now, history records his death as taking place in a different way, and I carefully allow for that. I make sure that not to trust that historical record, that he really was killed by my skilled ninja assassin. All the others manage to fight off their assassins. All of them do, in one way or another. Selim I dispatches his assassin. He is the equal of his assassin. Henry VIII is very young in 1515 and is able to defeat his assassin even before his guards get there. Leonardo da Vinci, his assassin makes the mistake of attacking him in his workshop and is dispatched by a working android arm that he just happens to get too close to, but doesn't know that it can move. And of all of those characters, of all the different characters and all the different ways that they find to survive, only one does not survive. Of all the characters and all the ways that they find to survive, Isabella deEste's way of surviving until her guards can reach her is the most grotesque. It's the most signal of her character. She is the closest thing my book comes to a bad guy. There is a bad guy, of course. There's a guy who sent those assassins. And it takes the whole of the book for our characters to not only figure out that each other were attacked as they variously correspond and meet with each other, but also then to band together in the greatest super team of all time to find and defeat the master of those assassins. But having a bad guy off stage like that isn't good enough. You need a bad guy in your central cast of characters. And Isabella deEste was one of those. It bugged me that she managed to buy her way into such a whitewashed historical reputation. And since another one of my characters was Lucrezia Borgia, and she was the natural choice to be the baddie, I didn't make her that. I believe that Lucrezia Borgia was probably everything that Isabella deEste paid people to say that she was. But the way that she survives her assassination, I practically danced for joy when the idea came to me. Someday I will have to polish up 1515 and just print it for you people. You could pay $1 for it on Amazon. Let's see. But anyway, that's Isabella deEste and a couple of long digressions. So this next one is by David Butler. This is Lusitania, his big panoramic novel about the doomed ship Lusitania, shot by a U-boat and sunk, over 1,000 people dead. Not as well known as the Titanic, but with a lot stronger geopolitical ramifications. It was a lot more important to sinking, even though it wasn't as, picturesque or ideologically poised as the Titanic. And this is the standard approach to this kind of novel at the time, which is that the author gives us a broad cast of characters, much like I just described with 1515, and then follows them through their time on the ship and through their experience with the sinking. So you get all sides of it. Took a lot of research. I don't know if this novel has ever been reprinted. I'd love to read it. I'd love to read it again. Then we have an old, is this Signet? I can't even read it. Yes, an old Signet classic that I wish I had. Some of you remember the Signet classics that I'm talking about, the particular age of them. They were pretty tough. They could really take a beating. If you had 40, 50 years ago, if you had a whole collection of classics in these old Signet classics, you'd probably still be able to read them. That's how tough they were. And this one, I don't know anything about it. I wish I still had it. It's The Travels of Marco Polo. I have no idea if this is abridged. I have no idea who translated it, which translation is being used here. Given that it was Signet, you know that it wasn't something they commissioned themselves. But I have no idea who it was, and I don't have the book anymore. I have a couple of editions of The Travels of Marco Polo back at Hyde Cottage. I don't know if there are any here. I should look around. Maybe this is actually here. But I guess since I don't know anything about the book, I can at least take the time to heartily recommend this book. In any English translation that you need, I can heartily recommend it. It's a terrible shame to me that there isn't a brand new English language translation that fixes some of the mistakes of the earlier translations and maybe gives you the maps that you desperately need, the footnotes that you desperately need, a long introduction that you desperately need. Such a volume ought to exist, and as far as I know, it doesn't. If you can correct me, if you can tell me that there's an English language volume like that I've missed, please let me know, because I would love to get it. It's a genuinely entertaining book. Okay, all right. This is I think I bought this for the cover. It's a Boris Vallejo cover, which is almost as good as Frank Frazetta. This is To Sail Beyond the Sunset by Robert Heinlein, with the cover being Boris Vallejo's obviously coy play on Venus on the Birth of Venus by Botticelli. And this is the story of Maureen Johnson. This is one of Heinlein's characters. We follow a lot of her adventures it's a collection of short stories, as the stories work their way towards her meeting another one of Heinlein's characters. This came out right around the time when Heinlein, much like Asimov and a couple of other authors, we're starting to think that maybe all the stories that I've ever written for $50 while hung over a manual typewriter might all be part of a gigantic mosaic that maybe I was planning all along. They're future history projects that some of them, to one degree or another, then later tried to actually convince us had always been that way, which underscores a point that's often been made, that the difference between Isaac Asimov or Ray Bradbury or Robert Heinlein and L. Ron Hubbard, who went completely insane and started a religion in which he was a god, that the difference between him and those other science fiction writers was just time. I don't know if that's true, but it's nonsense. Of course, none of these writers ever had a future history in mind when they typed out those first 100 stories for $10 a piece for John W. Campbell. But nevertheless, even though it's not convincing, this is a nice, big, generous collection of Heinlein work, and I like Heinlein a lot. I don't think I'm supposed to, but I do. Okay, this next one is another science fiction anthology. Actually, my favorite one from this author. This is The Winds of Change and Other Stories by Isaac Asimov. He put together what I thought was a rock-solid collection of his stuff, mostly in a central band of about a decade and a half, but he threw in some older stuff. I mean, the problem with Asimov putting his own stuff together into short story anthologies like this is that it's Asimov doing it. If it was somebody else doing it, even me, then the collection would probably be a little better. Asimov, he would, bang out a story, a 10-pager for, I don't know, somebody's bar mitzvah or something or other, and it would have one reasonably clever gimmick in it, sort of like the punchline of the little joke that you would get in the wrapper of a bubble gum. Nothing better than that, nothing more than that. But the thing about Asimov is that he would go all the way until 60 or 70 years old, still liking that little thing. It would never really occur to him that it wasn't all that good and that he shouldn't keep reprinting it, because that's all it was. Some of those early stories. And unfortunately, as with every Asimov collection, this one is marred by the inclusion of some of those unbelievably lightweight stories. And the only reason they're in here is because the author is the only one in the world who never revised his thinking that they are unbelievably lightweight. I guess that has a certain kind of charm to it anyway. Certainly when I had this, I don't have this book anymore, but when I had this book, I actually think maybe I do have an ebook of The Winds of Change and Other Stories. Not sure I have this cover, but maybe I do have an ebook of it. But when I went back to it the last time I did, which I think was in the early 2000s, that's how I looked at it. I read those dumb, clunky, juvenile stories and with a smile on my face, thinking, well, in an ideal world, you could build a really strong Asimov short story collection. But maybe it's also ideal to have Isaac on the page, right? To know that when you're going through these tedious grandpa stories, it's because he wanted you to. It's because he picked them himself. Maybe there's a charm to that would be lost in a technically better anthology. So I guess with Asimov, what I'm trying to say is if you're in the right frame of mind, and you should be, because this is a beloved figure, then if you're in the right frame of mind, you really can't lose. Even with the garbage, you really can't lose, because you'll know that he liked it. Anyway, let's move on. We'll finish up. Okay. We'll finish up with a book I really, really wish I had. Every time I see it, it's in such horrible shape that I don't get it. This is called Yankee Bookseller. It's being the reminiscences of Charles Goodspeed. And this is all about the Yankee bookseller, the Boston bookseller Charles Goodspeed, who set up a shop, Goodspeed's, in the basement of a building in downtown Boston, about a block away from the Brattle bookshop is now. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful place, and his son took it over. So that it was still in the Goodspeed's family. It was still in the Goodspeed name. And his son ran that store as a business and also as a meeting place, as almost a salon, if that weren't too poncy a word. Writers would come to Boston and go to that store, to the back room of that store. They would have things to do in Boston. They would have speaking gigs to do. They would have conventions to go to, but they would find a way to make time to go there, or to the son of Charles Goodspeed and his wife used to hold literary gatherings at their home as well. And sometimes they would spill over from the store to the home, but you could, if you had an invite into that back room, you could spend the whole afternoon talking with the literary figures of the day after day after day. And there were also bargains to be found at Goodspeed, and lots of great stuff. It was a wonderful, wonderful shop. And it lasted for a long time. And this is how it all started. These are the memoirs of Charles Goodspeed. And I don't have a copy of this book. I refuse. I saw a copy at the Brattle sale lot, ironically enough, just about maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and it was in horrible. I mean, you can tell whatever copy I had at the time was in horrible shape. And I probably gave it away, probably to a young Brattle worker who wanted to know what bookselling was like in Boston when his parents were children. But the copy that I saw a few months ago at the Brattle looked even worse than this. And all I could think about when I held it in my hand and thought, well, I don't know. All I could hear in my head was the voice of Charles Goodspeed's son, saying, oh, it's garbage now. What's it going to be when you finish with it? so I didn't get it. So I don't have a copy of this book. Of all the ones that I've shown you, it's the one I want the most. But we're going to wrap that up. That's fine. That's fine for now. That is the Library of the Lost for today. And we're just going to keep barreling along. So we'll tune in tomorrow for more books that I don't have. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.